Special days are something that are always a topic of discussion in all walks of life. We have birthdays, anniversaries, special days commemorating events in history, religious days. And there are other examples as well. Oliver Cromwell banned all such days when he ruled Britain, so any controversy over days is nothing new. We know that there were problems in the Thessalonian church with regard to understanding certain events that were to come in the future. But Paul now brings us to a new topic. Having previously dealt with the rapture, the Lord Jesus taking his church to be with him forever. This new topic is the day of the Lord. The very first word in verse 1 is really a clear indication of a new subject in contrast to what has gone before. And if the previous verses were something that was a somewhat new or uncommon topic to the believers in Thessalonica, then this subject ought not to have been. Indeed, verses 1 and 2 really state that they knew all about the day of the Lord and did not really need any more information about it. The day of the Lord is, after all, quite a common topic in the Bible. There are well over 20 specific mentions of the day of the Lord in the Old Testament, with several other scriptures that speak of that time, but not specifically using that phrase. There are 4 explicit mentions in the New Testament, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 2 being one of them, keeping it a key subject for consideration. All of these explicit mentions are in stark contrast to the joy and gladness we see at the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5 verse 3 provides a sole description of destruction for those that come into the full force of that day. This is in keeping with all of the other descriptions that are given for this day, and there is no sense that the Lord comes in any other capacity than judgment at that time. Clearly, Timothy had reported that this day was part of those things that were causing the Thessalonian Christians concern. So Paul is reminding them about what they already knew. He is realigning their knowledge of these events and setting them in order to alleviate the worries that they had. Paul set this great and awesome day to be after the previous event of the rapture. There is a link made to Daniel here, as the phrase times and seasons brought to us in verse 1 is the same statement used in Daniel chapter 2. In that reference, it speaks about God changing kings and setting up others for his purposes. Again, we have a contrast given to us between these two events. The call of the church does not need things in the world to be moved, as the church is to be taken out of the world, whereas the day of the Lord will be an occurrence that takes place in the world, and as such, God will move the players to accomplish his aims. But of course, the Thessalonians knew this already. They already knew the nature of the event as well, in that it is going to come as a surprise, a thief in the night, to all those moving around in the world at that time. We could be reminded of the story of the flood here, that despite the preaching of Noah the people were taken by surprise. The Lord Jesus himself, in Luke chapter 17, verses 26 and 27, states a similar circumstance for the people, as Paul is suggesting here in verse 3, where they thought they were living in peace and security. We have already considered many of the contrasts between the rapture in chapter 4 and the day of the Lord in chapter 5. But Paul continues to bring out more of these from a spiritual point of view, in order to further alleviate the concerns of those believers in Thessalonica. There are 4 pairs brought out here: darkness and light, asleep and awake, drunk and sober, and finally, night and day. All of the more positive aspects are the position that every Christian is in, and as such, we do not have to fear being caught unaware by this day. Each of these features that we enjoy is a subject in itself, so it is too much to go into now. Suffice to say that they are all things that allow us to enjoy the blessings and presence of God. Now, in themselves, these features may not suggest that believers are not to go through the day of the Lord, even if that is implied. But verse 9 clearly states the culmination of the plans that God has for His people. We are not destined for wrath. Why is this? Because the Lord Jesus has already suffered, bled, and died for us. Therefore, why would we be required to be judged in this way? The day of the Lord is all about judgment, and therefore there is no place for us who have believed, because the one who is judge has already taken it upon himself for each one of us. Verse 10 finishes with the words, that we might live with Him. This is to be fulfilled at the rapture, and therefore again points to us not being on earth for the day of the Lord. Paul here is providing the proofs for the confidence that we should have in us not being present on earth when that great and terrible day of the Lord takes place. It is worth pointing out verse 8, as it brings in those 3 common themes of faith, hope, and love. This is all tied up in what the Apostle Paul brings out here. These are 3 key pillars of the Christian life, and are linked to what we believe with regard to God's plans for us. We have believed in the saving work of Jesus. We are looking forward to a time when we will forever be with Him. And we are also looking to shape our lives to conform to His example in response to what we have believed and received. But such pillars would be somewhat shaky if suddenly there was some sort of risk that we might have missed a part of it, or that some have to go through an additional judgment at the hands of the one we are trusting in. None of this seems in keeping with the plans and destines that God has for those that belong to Him. And as such, we can have confidence that the judgment of the day of the Lord is not for us. How much we can rejoice and be glad in this. not only for the things that we do not have to endure, but for the wonderful plans and thoughts that God has towards us. The final verse, verse 11, of this section of chapter 5 aligns with this thought. Paul had laid out the order of things to come and highlighted the conditions that apply to Christians. As such, it should result in a truth and hope that we can encourage one another in, as well as building up each other for trials and difficulties that may lay ahead. Clearly, this was already going on to some extent. But a clearer understanding of these things would only result in more encouragement, as it should do for each of us, as we consider these things and the great plans that God has for us.